Welcome back. Now, Hassan Rouhani has just been endorsed by Iran's supreme leader to become the country's next president. He'll officially take the oath of office in Parliament on Sunday. Rouhani promised reform and an end to the country's international isolation as part of his election platform. His inauguration comes a day after he marched with millions of Iranians to mark Al-Quds Day in support of the Palestinian people. Well, with me now, live, is Professor Saeed Mohammed-Warandi of Tehran University. Thanks very much for coming on to the programme today. How important is this appointment? Because the Supreme Leader will still hold the reins of power, won't he?
Well, the leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, is the most important figure in the Constitution. He himself is elected by a body that is itself elected by the public. But the president is obviously a very important figure. He has very important powers. And what's interesting is often in the Western media, when it's convenient, they say he's powerless. But when it's not, they say he's a threat, like the former president Ahmadinejad. Many of the hostilities that were directed towards Iran and the sanctions were often based upon animosity towards him. They would call him a threat, and therefore they would justify hurting ordinary Iranians. But he is a very powerful figure. He is the second most important person in Iran, and he has the vote of over half of Iranians in an election that had a very high turnout, over 72%, almost 73%.
He was elected, wasn't he, partly on a promise to bring Iran back in from isolation. Do you think that means it will include negotiating with the West over the nuclear programme?
Well, he didn't promise anything. He basically said that he would work hard to remove the sanctions, and obviously I'm sure he feels that Iran is not isolated, as the majority of the international community has always supported Iran, such as the non-aligned movement. But he did say that he would strive hard, and he hopes for success in achieving results in the negotiations with the 5+1. But of course, the Iranians are skeptical as to whether the United States really wants to resolve the issue, because on the eve of President Rouhani's inauguration, the United States passed new sanctions against ordinary Iranians to make ordinary Iranians suffer, and the U.S. government, the president, really did nothing about it. So either the U.S. president is for these sanctions, or he is really not a very powerful figure in the United States and does not have the ability to stop Congress. But in any case, the Rouhani presidency, Dr. Rouhani will just by being a new president and bringing in new energy and new ideas, I think that will help non-Western countries move closer towards Iran. Some regional countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia will or may move towards rapprochement with Iran. In the case of Turkey, stronger relations, and in the case of Saudi Arabia, détente maybe. And some European countries will, I think, wish to move closer to Iran, and that, I think, itself will isolate the United States to a degree.
Do you think, I mean, talking about the EU in general, and you mentioned the US there and made some negative comments, but do you think they will take the opportunity to try and re-engage now with Iran at all, in any positive way?
That's hard to say. I think that countries like China and Russia, Brazil, and the BRICS countries, independent countries, will definitely use this as an opportunity to move away from the United States and ignore U.S. pressure for sanctions. And I think regional countries will also, many of them will use this as an opportunity as well. To a degree, the EU is the same. I think countries like Italy are already making moves to improve ties with Iran. But the United States is a different country altogether. It's a different situation. The United States really hasn't behaved rationally towards Iran for a very long time. The Iranians have negotiated with the United States in the past. They were called the axis of evil. After negotiations, the United States directs its sanctions at ordinary people. It's tried to shut down the central bank and even prevent Iran from importing medicine and food over the last year and a half, which has led to deaths. So U.S. intentions towards Iran and the U.S. behavior towards Iran has been something that has been the key problem. If the United States, though, is willing to take this opportunity to re-evaluate its policies towards Iran and take a serious step forward, the Iranians and President Rouhani will definitely be willing to make a positive move themselves and to move towards rapprochement.
OK, we do have to leave it there, but thank